have a long driveway to my home. There's a mailbox at the bottom, and I stopped to check it before leaving, and my neighbor was over there, and she notes that I travel a good bit. She was with her daughter, and she said, "John, where are you going?" I said, "Well, I'm going to Chicago. I've got a little entertaining and little recital to give." And her daughter popped up and said, "Oh, Mr. Dean, are you going to sing?" And I said, "Jill, please tell your daughter I only sing in front of Senate committees." It's a delight to appear on this panel, and I appreciate all of you for coming out as the first panel. I saw another panel. I wasn't sure which one I was on. There's one called Dean to Obama that I might have been able to share something on, but I think that was Cousin Howard that they have. And what I thought I would get into with our panel is just we only have time for a few issues, and I thought we ought to pick a few rather significant issues. There is always the possibility, given the title of this gathering of the president, the new president, and the law, that the new president could be John McCain. It is not a pleasant thought for me, as those of you who know some of my writings, I have deep fear of my former tribe and what they might do, and particularly in the law. I did a book called Broken Government, which I drew heavily on Cass's book on radicals in robes, where he did a nice analysis and raised some of the problems, and I placed that with some more of what would happen if a McCain president ended up there, and given the likelihood that there could be at least 2, maybe even 3 appointments on the court, and how they could change the dimensions of the federal court, the entire federal court, in particular the Supreme Court. It is not a pleasant thought. I wrote a litany of the activities that I thought that they might get into over a few terms, and it is not someplace I think we want to go. I don't think it's someplace that any of the political branches would ever take us, and it would change the American law in a way that I suspect a lot of Americans would be very unhappy. But that's not a pleasant thought. And that's not what we're going to focus this morning. It would rather be on what would happen if the Democratic candidate, or presumptive candidate, Mr. Obama, succeeds in prevailing. It's inaugurated next January 20th. Now, one problem immediately occurs to me that those of you who bloggers should be thinking about. The Republicans, over the last 20 years plus now, have developed a infrastructure and almost a matrix of law firms, lawyers, public interest, litigation groups that are very effective at knowing where they want to take the law. Federalist Society is a leading champion of this group. They're a school for future judges. Speaking of future judges, I must pause and tell you how much I hope that I'm sitting on a panel with somebody who would be on the short list of Mr. Obama's selections for the next court, and that would be Cass. He's a former colleague at Chicago. He's somebody that the candidate, I suspect, may talk with from time to time, and he brings a background that is exactly what the court needs. He would call himself, I think, a minimalist, and somebody who would take the law where all of us would like to see it go. Most Americans would like to see it go. The thing that worries me is that at this time during the 2000 campaign, the Bush campaign had a whole team operating nationwide. I talked to a number of them who were busy planning exactly what they would do when Bush took power. And indeed, during the transition, they even furthered what they had planned to do. They went through executive orders. They looked at opinions of the Office of Legal Counsel in the Department of Justice, which has such a mighty influence on the operations of the executive branch. And they do exactly what Clinton had done and earlier earlier presidents that they wanted to alter in effect. To my knowledge, while there may be some rough efforts and some thoughts in general, there's really no organized effort that I'm aware of, and I may be cast incorrectly on this, to do this for the Obama campaign. He's got about 180 days to look at 8 years of really changing the law of the land. And I say that not just in the sense of legislation, but also the operating law of the executive branch and executive orders. And it's an awesome task to go through all that he has laid out. Directives and executive orders are complex. Many of them are classified. They won't be able to get their hands on all of them. They'll have a hint of some of them. And this is work that bloggers could talk about and get particularly those who were addressing the legal areas started and get some of this thinking done so that when they get to the White House, they wouldn't be overwhelmed with this need.